Welcome to another Bearded Butchers broadcast. Today we have a very special guest, somebody that we are really excited about joining the show, and that is Chef Andrew Zimmern.
Andrew Zimmern, welcome to the show. We've been a
What's up, guys?
We've been a huge fan. It's an honor to have you on.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. It always makes me smile because I mean, there's squirrels in my backyard that have more street cred in my house than I do. I mean, it's seriously. So there's the part of me that's out there in public that is that whatever that persona is, whatever people think, if you're on TV and write books and do the different things that I do. And then there's the reality of walking into the house with my head hung low because I didn't clean the garage well enough this weekend. So you know how, I mean,
We certainly can relate.
Everywhere.
Yes, sure.
Yep.
I would say you were famous before you were famous, in the sense you were a chef for many years before. What was it, like 2006 when Bizarre Foods came on the scene? Would you say that probably propelled you to the limelight the most?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's funny. The story's actually better, and I rarely get asked the question that way where I remember it most accurately.
I would love to hear it. If you
Yeah, no, this is a great It's fantastic. I mean, this is what makes for great conversation. So there are 2,000 shows a day are pitched. 1% get made. Of that 1%, another 1% make it to air. I mean, most just never make it to air. Wow. And it's rarer still that you have a show that is on for years and years and years. I mean, it's still on. It's wildly popular.
I just watched it on Sunday.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
The number one show on Cooking Channel is Bizarre Foods and Delicious Destinations reruns. So, and it does really well on the streamer. So that's great, but it also means they're not buying any more shows from me for the foreseeable future.
Sure.
So it does have a flip side, but I'm very, very proud of the show. When they made the original, they liked it. We made a pilot. They went, I'll start at the beginning. We pitched it on paper. They said, come back to us with a stronger concept, but we like it. Stronger concept came back. They gave us $2,000 or $3,000. Give us a proof of concept video. We shot a proof of concept video. Then they gave us $5,000 or $6,000 and said, shoot us a better proof of concept video. And we did. Then they bought a pilot, and we spent 3 weeks in Asia. It wound up being, it airs, and I think you can find it still on Discovery Plus, called Bizarre Foods of Asia. We went around to 3 countries.
What a country to start in, too.
I was going to say, that had to make you nervous.
Continent.
Well,
it's a whole continent.
Yeah.
And if I may, how much, I guess, bizarre food experience did you have? I mean, you've been in the culinary scene for some time, but I would assume that, this would have been a bit of a cold plunge. Was it not?
Was your stomach ready for it?
No, I think it was self-selecting. I think I chose the show, and we can talk about the show and the pitch and how I sold it. But what upset me was that people somehow thought a bowl of pasta with white truffles at a restaurant in Abruzzi was somehow more valid than eelhead soup with coconut milk and chilies on the side of the road in the central Tide River system, right? And so that was sort of the genesis of the whole thing. And it's growing up, my dad was we're gonna get eels and nail them to a tree and strip them out of skin, and we're gonna go frog gigging, and we're gonna do this and eat that. And when I was little, traveling with him in Europe, which I had a chance to do, we would, I'd be like, what's on this toast he goes, well, I ordered you the pigeon, the squab. And so that's the sauteed breast, that's the confit leg. And on that toast is the seared heart and liver mashed with a fork. So I was already,
okay.
I was
pretty well cultured then. Yeah.
I don't know if it's culture, just like I was already nose to tail. I was already organ friendly. I was already in the shallow end of the pool. I got into the deep end of the pool on someone else's dime, right? But I was the right guy for the job.
Sure.
But anyway, the pilot airs and they greenlight the series. Now, when they greenlight the series, you've now cleared this huge hurdle. But what that means is you can go shoot the next 8 shows, which isn't a lot. And you're still shooting episode 8, and you're still editing 6, 7, and 8 when episode 1 airs. So you have no way to change anything. You have no way to get feedback other than the pilot, which was radically different than what the show actually was. We took 3 weeks in 3 countries to make the pilot, with a crew of like 7. To make the episodes work, it was 1 city in 1 country, me and 2 other people, shooting, doing sound, writing it at night, in the hotel room. I mean, it was crazy shoestring, right? Because we wasn't going to get a lot of money. So in TV world, episode 1 comes in at a certain number, a certain level. And the network needs to see growth. And the magic episode is number 3. Okay. It's why when we do, are scheduling and programming episodes of other shows of mine, you don't put your best show number 1 or number 2. You make your best show number 3 because you want to hook that audience and pump the number.
Right.
So we make the show and it comes in here, and show number 2 is like 0.03 of a percentage point. Okay. Show number 2 is better than show number 1. And I'm a little panicky.
Yeah.
And because it's like, this is my dream job and this is my chance and I'm only going to get 1 chance. All the negative sort of crap that you're
they get in there fast. Yeah.
When the icy hand of fear like squeezes your larynx in the middle of the night. And I'm sitting there watching episode 3, and episode 3 was Ecuador. And a shaman performed an exorcism on me, and it was not in the original pitch or beat sheet. And we were just bored. We had like 6 hours. I was like, this is a witch doctor. He does exorcisms. It's like $10. I'll pay for it.
Yeah.
But we should shoot it. Thinking there'd be some good B-roll.
Sure.
Dead serious. We thought, okay, it's just gonna be some funny B-roll. We go in there and we spend 4 hours. We shoot every second of it. This guy spat on me, poured homemade like hooch on me, lit me on fire, beat me with these branches. I broke out in hives over 100% of my body. Well, not the soles of my feet, but everywhere else.
Right.
I'm naked in the room. He takes a guinea pig and beats it on my chest until the guinea pig is dead. Wow. He does the same with a chicken. And by the way, you have to smash a chicken against a man's chest to kill the chickens.
I haven't tried, but I can imagine.
This escalated in a hurry.
Oh, it was insane. It was insane. He's smoking coca leaf and blowing it at me and then lighting me on fire. The whole idea is to kind of suck the evil spirits out of me, trap them in these dead animals, throw all the dead animals in the corner of the room, and then he scoops it all up and burns it by the side of the river. So he gets rid of the evil spirits. So we air the thing in the middle of the whole thing. At one point, I'm trying to deliver a line to camera very seriously, and he just walks right up to me and spits in my face and then lights me on fire. And I just started laughing.
Sure.
I just started laughing. I mean, what else are you going to do, right? I mean, by the way, I should also tell you he was about 4'11".
Yeah.
And with a headdress, and he's bare chested, and he's chest bumping me, but it's really his head. And I mean, it was just
bizarre and comical at the same time.
There was no point where you were like, I'm out.
Yeah, every second of it I was out. But I was like,
get me out
I
here.
want to tell this story more.
Yeah.
Right? And the show airs on a Monday. Wednesday morning, we get the numbers on the show, and there was like a tiny little dip between episode 2 and 3. And I'm just like, that's it. We're done. Like, we're not going to, because the network isn't spending a lot of money promoting, not a lot of marketing spend against the, once they're investing money in the shows and the talent is popular, then you get marketing dollars.
Yeah.
So I'm watching.
If I may interject, at the time, we didn't have the social platforms to really kind of do the marketing in a very scrappy, almost free or cheap way that we might have today.
I think the iPhone was invented the year after we shot this.
So it wasn't like you could deliver this any other way than pretty much on a television.
You're not going to your Instagram and
that
make
costs
a post.
a lot of money.
Sure.
Yeah,
that is correct.
I'm sorry.
So
yeah,
no. So I'm watching my television career, my that I'd worked, by the way, to go from local to national shows to then my own international show.
Huge.
I'm watching my television career circle the drain because you do not get a second chance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And phone rings. It's Wednesday afternoon. And voice saying, "Hi, it's John. I'm the booker at the Jay Leno show." And I'm like, up yours, Steve. I thought it was my buddy from school, like messing around with me. Phone rings back. "Hi, this is, the Jay Leno show. We're looking for Andrew Zimmern." And I'm like, "The Tonight Show, Leno show?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "All right, you have my attention." And they're like, "Can you be in LA tomorrow night?" And I'm like, "I can be there Friday." I'm like, "It's just too late."
Yeah.
I've got a 1-year-old and it's Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah.
You shoot at 3-4 in the afternoon. I can't get there but I could be there Friday. They're like, "Call you right back." Call me back. They're like, "Okay, we're doing this. Car will pick you up there. We're booking this travel. Who do we work with? Blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, my head is spinning.
Mm-hmm.
I fly out to LA and the booker had seen the Ecuador show. A friend of theirs had called them while the episode is on and said, "You need to turn on Travel Channel right now. There is a guy getting an exorcism from an Ecuadorian shaman in Otavalo at the world's largest outdoor market. And it's the best thing I've seen on TV."
Mm-hmm.
And I guess they had showed it to Jay. He loved it. I fly out. It was very successful. I did the Tonight Show. Oh, by the way, Tonight Show airs the day it's taped. And so episode 4 was a lot of growth between episodes 1, 2, 3. Episode 4, we went from, 100,000 people watching the show to millions. And it became, without Jay Leno's bookers putting me on the show and Jay thinking that the humor involved in what I was trying to do was funny.
Mm-hmm.
And Leno eats hot dogs, bologna sandwiches, and drinks a quart of orange juice a day. He has an extremely limited diet.
Okay.
He's like an overgrown child that way. And he would identify himself that way. And so for him, like a roast beef sandwich is like a huge reach.
Taking a step.
Like meat on bread. I don't know. And so we just had a lot of fun with it. And we had shot a show in Scotland and his mother was from Scotland and we just hit it off. And without that, there's no show. And the show was on all the way up until Travel Channel switching over from being a travel and food network to a ghost and paranormal show. But I forget how important that moment, because it's seconds and inches, right?
Certainly.
The shaman was not on the beat sheet. Like you only shoot what's on the beat sheet. Because every frame, now tape, now not even tape. Every time you turn on the camera, it's resources because an editor has to look at it. He has to bin the shots. Everyone has to look at it. It's an expensive proposition, and so it was there. But for the grace of God goes Bizarre Foods.
There you go. And best $10. You know that ROI on that $10 is it was pretty dramatic.
Good.
That's huge.
Well, it was pretty good.
I love that story, and to have it reach the light of day, that's fantastic.
And to be told by the man himself.
Yeah.
That's great.
I'm curious, Andrew. So you had a background in radio. Did you prior to that? Do you feel like that helped segue you into television? Just with regard to having some experience and
it's an immense skill set. Long form radio, and I was doing a 3-hour show 5 days a week. People are tuning in for an average of like 23 minutes. And less in television, but radio, especially talk radio that I was on, it's like 20, 21, 23 minutes, something like that. And mostly drive time numbers, pushing that, et cetera. But you're on for 3 hours. So you never know when your regular listeners are tuning in. My most loyal fans on radio might be 3:00 on Wednesdays and 4:00 on Thursdays and 4:30 on Fridays. So there's there has to be verisimilitude in the way you present, the tone of your voice, your attitude. It doesn't mean that you can't be funny one moment and serious the next. It just means that you have to be consistent across 3 hours of airtime. In television, the way it's edited, if you're shooting a show for a week, you can't be happy one day, sad the next, and they try to cut it.
Right.
And there's like happy, buoyant, smiling guy and depressing, sad.
It doesn't work.
Angry guy. It doesn't work. So, there's that. Then there is simply the matter of standing next to someone and interviewing them. And with radio, you have to describe for people to a different degree what you were thinking, feeling, saying, hearing. I mean, just everything, because you're painting a picture in their head. So for my kind of television, or what became my kind of television, that became an extremely valuable asset. People, to this day say I could listen to you describe food all day long. I learned that in radio. Everything else you have pictures for. It's like,
certainly.
There you go. Hold up a picture. I mean, see for yourself. That's what it looks like. Thank you. I mean, I didn't have some sort of massive talent. I think I had a decent vocabulary and all the rest of that. But it was in radio that you learned, through good direction from good station managers and good producers to, over the course of my radio career that was 6 or 7 years, to actually be able to communicate. Then are you a good interviewer?
Oh, certainly.
Yeah. I mean,
can you extract information and all that type of stuff and make it relative and interesting and avoid,
and you hit the last word was the most important. You have to, it's not what I want to hear, right?
It's what the audience wants.
We still joke about this because we get notes from producers. Could Andrew be a little less smart? And they mean it in the best way possible, which is the longer you did, like, I know how the coffee beans are roasted, but I have to remember most people don't. So asking, what do you do with the beans? Do you roast them? Is a question I need to ask when I'm standing there in the middle of the African jungle with a guy picking coffee beans at altitude in Ethiopia, right? And I have to be the best avatar for the person on the couch watching the show. And there's two main audiences for my type of television, docu-follow, reality, lifestyle TV. People who come home and they want to pop a beer or a glass of wine and put their feet up and be entertained. And then there's people who want to learn something and are maybe interested in the socioeconomic, anthropological, historical tidbit that I'm going to drop. And so you sort of gotta play with a couple of different types of audiences. And if they don't find you interesting, you're gone. I tell people all the time, they say, well, what's the secret? I mean, you've been making TV for a while. All that means, it doesn't matter whether I have a hardware store show or a stand and stir cooking show or a travel show. For whatever reason, people want to tune in to me one time a week or whatever, and just and watch. And they still can't, it's TV programmers wish that there was a way, an algorithm or something that could help them pick winners. It's not. The audience, what they choose to watch is still very much a mystery. I'm super blessed that people for, the last 16 plus years have wanted to watch content that I make.
Oh, I agree.
That's fantastic.
I agree. And you are very interesting. And it can be the tone of a voice, somebody's, personality comes through, that all that stuff, an audience will fall in love with it. And I know personally some of your favorite moments that I've seen throughout your show history, but I'm curious, like, obviously we're butchers. And so, a question that comes to my mind is, what are some of your experiences related to, let's say meat or protein abroad? I know they're vast, but can you think of any certain, obviously having a chicken or a guinea pig beat to death on your chest is pretty extreme, but like I personally, one of my favorite moments was the shark meat that you were eating in Iceland. And things like that, obviously as Americans, we, you've got your cheeseburger and steak and some things that are very vanilla. But I know it broadens dramatically across the globe. What's Andrew Zimmern's favorite protein?
Kudu. Look, you guys
the African animal kudu,
like the deer, antelope. The antelope family.
Yep. What about
it's venison?
Yes.
The kudu just has such gorgeous marbling, and it's very lean, but they eat a very grain-rich diet, and they do so much running. They both have a well-exercised muscle, but they're gorging when they do find food.
Okay.
So if you can take them when they're feeding, it's mind-boggling. It's like the best veal you've ever eaten. Donkey, another one that I wish we ate more of. I eat donkey every day of the week. It's twice as healthy for you as any other red meat. And I mean, if we didn't have the popularity of Eeyore and the Winnie the Pooh books, we'd all be eating donkey 3 times a week, because the animals are easy to raise. There's good yield on them, and they're absolutely delicious.
May I interject? Where are they eating donkey?
Italy, China, and countries around there. I mean, look, Central Asia, horses and donkeys are highly prized. They're Kazakhstan, for example, literally means horse people. I mean, these are the horse is the spirit of the horse is the national symbol, but at the market, the largest section in meat is horse everything. And, we're the only country that really doesn't. A lot of other countries have become westernized to it. But, there's an entire city in the 5th ring suburb outside of Beijing that tourists, Chinese, everyone flocks to eat donkey. And they have 200 donkey dishes on the menu.
Wow.
Soups, braised dishes, seared dishes, luxury cuts, organs, everything. And if I took you there and you ate it, you would sit down and go, "Oh my God, what kind of beef is this?" I mean, it's just that phenomenal. Kudu eats more like veal. But we've had some really funny, animal breakdown moments in the show. My favorite, we were in Thailand, Isan province, way up in the north. And we wanted to see they love to cook different meat dishes, beef especially. And so we wanted to experience this with them, and we have to be prepared to give and not to take. So we decided the best thing to do is let's make it part of the story. Let's find a couple of families and a couple of dads, because it's very patriarchal society in these villages. And I'm going to buy a cow, and because they're not that expensive there.
Okay.
And they're also not very big, and they're pretty darn skinny.
Okay.
And we're going to buy a cow, and we're going to butcher it Thai style. And it's very different. And you guys know this, but all different cultures. I mean, the Chinese butcher chicken differently than we do here in America.
That's one thing about, like, and just if I can interject real quick, like our YouTube channel is we see comments from all over the world. So our style of butchering and processing is so much different than others. So sometimes we get, criticized for the way we do things, but that's just how we do it here in America. That's all.
That's exactly right. And I mean, I get this all the time where people are like, so everyone raves about the Brazilian picanha cut, right? Why don't I see that, in my store? It's like, well, we don't cut things that way. You know, if a Chinese family saw us separating dark quarters and light quarters and throwing away feet, backbones, necks, heads, they'd have a heart attack. I mean, they don't even, their concept of butchering into quarters, I mean, it's a completely foreign subject. So it's the same thing in Thailand, we're breaking down a cow. So we're breaking down this cow together, and you know, you do it on the ground, and they're absolutely brilliant. I mean, to be able to butcher an animal, essentially roll it out of its skin, right? So you're not stringing it up in the tree like you're dressing a deer, or commercially cutting beef. And then to be able to proceed from one end to the other with tiny little knives that couldn't cut through a piece of dental floss. I mean, these guys are absolutely amazing, and they all have a rock to sharpen their little, you know, every time they're cutting something, but they're just whizzing through this thing, right? And we're having so much fun. And there are certain glands, as you know, in an animal's body that you really try to avoid.
Oh yes,
because it will taint the meat horrifically. I mean, horrifically. You know, they wanted to eat, so they love eating raw meat there. And when the animal is broken down, there's a piece of cartilage right in the chest where the ribs come together. You know, all animals have them. And on a cow, there's like a piece of meat the size of half a golf ball that kind of sits on the inside of it. That's like their favorite piece. They were fighting over that. Then they decided to give it to me. It was good, not great, you know. But they love the texture of it, you know. And so we're eating. I mean, we're going. They want me to taste everything, and we're just having a blast. Meanwhile, one guy is taking all the trim. He's scraping bones with a spoon, and you know, hacking up little bits of parts that I'm glancing over, and I'm like, wow, we discard that where I'm from, you know. And that's ground up into we grind that, pass it, liquidize it, ammoniate it, and make hot dogs.
There you go.
Right.
And he's scraped this into a bowl, and he's going to make an Isan style sort of raw beef dip. And he puts, you know, a handful of hot chilies that are growing wild by the side of the road. And I know they're going to be hot. I didn't realize they were going to literally take skin off the roof of my mouth, but you know, it was spicy. Yeah. And everything goes in there. And then they start taking all the discarded glands and squeezing liquid that, by the way, in our country, not only is it illegal, but we go out of our way to make sure that all of those glands and the liquid because they're so bitter.
Oh yeah.
I mean, a drop of some of this stuff will taint the meat in a way that it makes it unsaleable. And they're just squeezing it in and tasting it. Oh, no more. And I'm literally, my eyes, because I know
what's about to happen.
Well, again, I want to be a better guest than anything else. So, you know, there's that. You know, I shot a 2,600-pound wild buffalo in New Mexico, and we had to string that up using a boat lift on its side and butcher that. You know, being out in tribal situations in Africa, butchering a wildebeest, we had to do that in like 15 minutes because we were being circled by lions.
Yeah, the lions come take it.
This is the part that I think most of the shows that do this sort of storytelling skip. So we're hunting this wildebeest, and they explained to me that we're only going to take the animal that the herd kicks out. Okay. Right. So if it's just like the tribal world over there, if you're useless to the tribe, if you can't fulfill a role, you're pushed out. You're on your own.
Yep.
And you know, wildebeest, it's usually the oldest male. Their eyes go. They don't have speed. While the women and the children are feeding and grazing, the adult alpha males will look out for danger, and then they'll eat, right? So if you're an old grandpa wildebeest, you're the one drinking alone by the side of the river when the crocodile comes out and grabs you, right?
Yeah.
And so the whole time that we're tracking the wildebeest, I'm like talking to the camera, whispering, because I have to talk to the audience, explain to them what's going on. We're following the animal that's been pushed out of the herd. And finally, one of the translators tells my guide what I'm saying, because he keeps telling me to shut up. And he's saying, no, he has to tell them what we're doing. And I guess he said, well, what's he telling them? And he found out, and he turns around and gets really mad at me. He's like, and essentially I said, what's he saying? He said, that you're wrong. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? That's what we talked about back at camp. And he's like, no, that's what the white guys with the provisioning thing were telling you. We're not following a wildebeest. And I'm like, well, what do you mean we're not following a wildebeest? This is a wildebeest hunting story. What are we following? He says, it's easier to track the lion that's going to kill the wildebeest. Wow. Because the lion doesn't have any predators in this part of the plains, right? And so the lion just indiscriminately walks towards the wildebeest and then hides and crouches and crawls in. The wildebeest, that they refined sense of scent and all this other kind of stuff and movement, they're harder to track. The lions are easy to track for those tribal people, not for you and I, right? And I'm like, we're tracking a lion, and the guy's like, lions, and I'm like, what do you mean? And it's like, well, it's a female lion that are the better hunters, and 2 of her juvenile children. Okay, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, where are they? And he says, get up. And we kind of raise up. We're in chest high grass. Okay. And he says, do you see the way the wind is moving left to right? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, you see it across the top of the grass? I'm like, yeah. He says, you see like 15 yards up, there's like a little wrinkle in the wind? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, that's a lion walking through the grass.
Wow. And you're thinking, like, I'm hoping he's headed that way and not this way.
15 yards away from us. It's like, right, we're following it because we have to shoot it. And I don't know if you're a good shot. And I'm like, oh, I'm definitely taking that. I mean, so the lions find the wildebeest. We stop. The guide tells me, by the way, he's 4'10", 90 pounds. And he's holding 3 sticks and a piece of leather.
Sure.
And he wraps them together and he says, lie on my back. I'm 225 pounds. I lie on his back. I'm like, this guy can't get up. By the way, he's like 70, right? He says, when I stand up, I'm going to spread the sticks. It's going to be a notch. You lay your gun in the notch, and right in the center of the sight is going to be the wildebeest. You pull the trigger in 2 seconds. The lions scatter, and then we've got a couple of minutes to get the wildebeest. And I'm living there. I am ready to mess my pants. I mean,
I'll bet
because we're like 6 miles walk to the van. There's no like, payphone at the 7-Eleven, grab a Slurpee, call the cops. I mean, you were out in the middle of, and by the way, you're not in a national park. You are in tribal land. And it's you, the lions, the wildebeest, and by the way, the 15 other things that can kill you that are within 15 feet of where you are.
Yeah.
And he literally like pops up, lifts my whole body. I lay my rifle. I'm literally right in the sight. Boom, wildebeest. Everything scattered. We see stuff going on. I'm freaking out because I'm like, what if the lions run to us? And my translator is saying the lions are scared. There's a bang. They're not used to it. They're not coming towards you. You're not the food necessarily right now. I know, but I'm warm and I'm breathing out CO2. And I'm like, I've seen these shows, right?
Yep.
And we get to, and they're like, everyone grab a knife, hurry the blank up. I mean, there's no messing around. We're processing this animal, and we're on the radio. We're calling in the truck. The truck has to come find us. The Jeep.
Yep.
And we get everything in, and about, 60 seconds after we're riding away, because we had to find a clearing with a rock to process the animal. We see the lions there like pissed off, and the mom lion is like roaring. I mean, it literally was like a Disney movie.
Yeah.
It was, my heart was in my throat. But the more you do that kind of thing, and I've been lucky enough to be able to do that kind of thing a lot in a lot of different countries, you not only do you get used to it, but you're able to then impart a different method of storytelling because you're not just freaked out all the time.
Well, you get the confidence from experiences like that.
It's great. And, butchering a wildebeest, butchering all animals at a certain point is the same. Fresh meat that's not hung, that's not aged, different story. And some are legitimately better than others. I was pretty amazed. The giant African porcupines, our biggest one in North America, I think the largest on record in North America is like 20 pounds or something. I mean, that's by the way, a very good sized porcupine because there's a lot of it is quill, right? The Southern African porcupines are about 75 pounds. They're huge.
That's the size of a small pig.
Oh yeah,
that's
giant.
Amazing.
And they are very violent, and they know they have very large quills. And you go down into burrows to spear them and pull them out. And the tribal people that we were with, they take all the quills off. The women use them for jewelry and for implements, needles, and things like that. They use them as syringes they don't realize that they're inoculating their fellows against disease, but it's essentially what they're doing. Use them for all kinds of things. Then you take this layer of fat that's like an inch thick off of the animal that the quills attach to. Then underneath that's the meat. They take the organs and the blood and they make a soup out of it. You eat that right away. The meat on the bone, the muscle meat, goes up into a tree to air dry. It's like 120 degrees and no humidity there. So that happens in like 10 minutes. And so it preserves it. And then you take the entire blanket of skin and fat and just drop it over a live fire until it extinguishes. And you let it heat up for like 10 minutes. And then the whole tribe, 40 people, each person gets a little square. One of the most delicious bites on any animal in the whole world.
Of the fat? That's what you're eating?
Well, yeah, because if you imagine the biology, that fat, when you look at it like under a magnifying glass, is streaked with tiny little filaments of muscle because it has to move all of those porcupine quills.
Wow.
And so it's really like the best part of the pork belly, or why a pig's snout, which moves in 1,000 different directions, omnidirectional. If you peel away the tough skin and everything else, the snoot, if you braise it for a couple hours and then mark it on a grill, is like the best piece of pork on the animal, is because it's actually a muscle. And people think it's something gross, but if you think about it, you're like, oh yeah, pigs are rooting around. It's a really well-used muscle covered in a lot of fat. And if you cook it the right way, like you would belly, it's remarkable. So yeah, pretty darn delicious.
That's awesome.
So when you
there's one thing I can guarantee is going to happen is when this podcast airs, I'm going to go back and listen to it because I got to hear this a second time. This is great.
Well,
I love
Andrew,
it.
when you think about some of the creatures that we've talked about, whether culturally, ethically, we eat this, they don't eat that, whatever. You go, you're Hindu, you don't eat cows and things like that. I'm just curious, like, what about what we consider pets? I know Asian countries eat dogs and cats and that sort of thing. Have you experienced some of this yourself?
I was thinking about that. Just sorry if I can interject. I was thinking, what would happen if we put a video on YouTube of how to butcher a donkey?
Well, we'd find out.
People would go bonkers for it.
I just wonder what happened.
They'd love it.
I wonder what the American people would think of it.
One of our guys has a couple of donkeys. I'm not sure if he's going to be willing to give them up.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. There's many species of donkey, just like many species of cow. They're not all good for meat eating.
Sure.
There's a smallish donkey species that is very similar in China, Italy, Central Asia, that they eat. Fantastic. I don't think the outrage would be the same because a lot of people don't keep donkeys as pets. They're traditionally working animals. And in America, they've fallen out of favor as a working animal because bank loans for $1 million, harvesters are easier to get than a donkey and more reliable. So, and that's its own different set of problems. But the thing that's that I think would be really interesting is that people don't have an idea of donkey as pet. If you butchered a horse,
I'm glad you brought that up.
People would go and believe me, every time I can tell when, you know, a show of mine goes on rerun on where I eat horse, that is on a linear channel, not non-streamer, because I get, you know, Twitter outrage, like you wouldn't believe, and it's a shame because we actually have a very large market for horses as food. We send 99% of it south to Mexico and Central America. But with so many people hungry in the world today, and with an animal that's quick to raise that we have plenty of, if we just spread our resource, every meal that we eat of a different type of animal or no animal at all, right, is one less meal that's taken from a factory farm. And that's the food that's killing us, right? And it's why I'd rather eat less meat, but better quality from a better resource by percentage than, you know, I'm not vegetarian, right? But I certainly eat less meat these days than I used to because I'm 61, you know, and you just have to, you just have to start doing things a different way at different phases of your life.
Oh, sure.
I don't metabolize the same way that I used to. But, you know, I mean, look, in our country, we have trouble getting people to eat a small fish with its head on it.
Yes.
Which is what we should be eating the most of. Says every other country in the world, historically, culturally, anthropologically, every which way. And by the way, they are typically the most delicious, but people in America, oh, I don't want a bone. They have bones, and I don't like the head on it, and it looks like Nemo, and all of this cultural garbage. But we are taught subconsciously at a very early age in this country to buy into certain types of mythologies. And I had a personal experience with this that I think is a really good example. My kid, when he was little, I got to him before pop culture did. So before he went to kindergarten where they keep guinea pigs in the classroom, he was with me in South America eating guinea pig. So to him, guinea pig was food.
Yeah, sure.
Guinea pig
never
nuggets.
thought anything of it.
Guinea pig nuggets.
The grasshoppers, Mexico, chapulines, same thing, right? And a dozen other different animals. I'm with him. He's like 3 or 4. It's June. We've had a big rainfall. It's sunny. Sun breaks through. I realize I've got that afternoon to till the garden, move some of the stones and the steps. You know, it's after winter. You know, I got to get things ready. About to go away for 2 weeks, and my wife at the time wants me to, you know, like it's on the list. Get the garden cleaned out. I'll plant everything, but clean it, till it, get it ready, put on the new chicken wire. And so I grab him because I'm on dad duty while she's out doing something, and come on up, and I'm lifting up these pavers, this walkway, and readjusting them. And, you know, at that time of year, you lift them up and there's 100 big worms underneath each one of those things. And I grab one, but I should also tell you, as we're doing that, the dandelions and stuff like that, I'm showing him you can eat the leaves and you can eat this, and the garlic flowers are up and you can eat that. And he loved that when he was little. So I said, oh, you can eat the worm. And I eat a worm, and he goes, worms are yucky. And I'm like, excuse me? And I know we never use that word about food in our house, about anything. And I'm like, where is he getting this? And he wouldn't eat it. And I thought it was the strangest thing in the whole world, because this kid would eat anything. And it's about 1.5 years later, and we're clearing out his bookshelf. And I found this cardboard book, 8 pages, called Yummy Yucky. And I don't know what made me open it, because I didn't remember the spring before and it's like, you know, chocolate is yummy, and, you know, crabgrass is yucky, and then there's a thing that's like lollipops are yummy, worms are yucky. And I'm just like, oh my gosh,
bingo.
He read pop culture got to him. All he needed to do was read it in a book as a 3-year-old, or have it read to him by the nanny or his mom. I didn't read that book to him. I never would have bought that book. I would throw that book away.
That's blasphemy to Andrew Zimmern.
And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's how quickly pop culture can get in there. So you imagine some of the ideas that we have that are so entrenched. Squirrel is a huge one. I happen to love squirrel. I would put squirrel up against any other meat that you would eat, just in terms of bite by bite deliciousness.
I've got 2 in my freezer as we speak that my boy
love
got.
Them. I hope they're big fat red squirrels, because those are absolutely fantastic. And I love going squirrel shooting in like Tennessee in the fall, and pack the freezer, and then chicken fried squirrel with pan cream gravy, and homemade biscuits is just about my favorite meal in the world.
Man.
And the meat on those animals, they're doing for 60 days before, if you can get them at the end of the season, is eating, the most delicious nuts that fall from trees.
And just
if you get them where
they're,
in West Virginia, where I like to go, if I can get there when they're feeding off the last beech nuts of the year, it's the best. I mean, they're basically finishing themselves on beech nuts. It's insane how delicious that is. Try to get people to eat squirrel. Now, if I serve it and don't tell them what it is, they're devouring it, which I do to my friends all the time. And that we're not eating more of that, and yet people are going hungry is a very serious ethical.
And they're running around everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
We don't know what to do with them. And by the way, because for demos and stuff, I can't just go hunt an animal and then feed it to someone like my chef friends in Europe.
Right.
So there is a farm in California that's raising them. They're scrawny, they're not great, but for the purposes of a food demo, I've cooked squirrel at food festivals and stuff like that. And the people that try them love them. But they're not even raising them right. They're not even putting a lot into it because they don't see the value on the other side. But when the apocalypse comes, or whatever you believe in, we're all going to be eating anything that's around. And I am not a doom scroller. I'm not a prepper. I just know that existentially we are in the middle of a food crisis that most people can't see. But they observed it during COVID, and yet it didn't scare them enough that there's no food of certain types on American shelves. And if that doesn't scare, or the fact that eating well and healthily has become a class issue in America, and that should scare people. By the way, scare them into positive action.
Sure.
We need to expand our diet. I mean, I'm talking to butchers. In the old days, animals, a couple lambs, a pig, cow, walk into a butcher shop, the back door, and then for a couple of days, all the different cuts populate the case in small town America. And
absolutely.
My grandmother grew up going into that case, and she had a recipe for head cheese, and the first line of the recipe, it's framed in my kitchen, says saw a head into quarters. And so I find that funny that's the first line, that housewives would have a little a little saw on hand. But the idea of buying even kidneys, try to find veal kidneys.
Can't find them.
You have to special order them.
Yeah.
One of the most delicious things when I'm out deer hunting, I have a show called Wild Game Kitchen that's on the Outdoor Channel.
We watch it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We shot something in this last season where I did something with the venison, and showed people what I typically do when I'm out there, which is I grill the kidneys and the liver and the heart, and that's what we're eating while we're skinning and butchering the animal. And the idea, and by the way, then I feed the crew, and they're all like, "Oh, I'm not so sure." And they take one bite, and it's just salt, charred rosemary. I take big handfuls of rosemary, char it till it's blackened, turn it to charcoal rosemary dust, mix it with salt, lemon zest, a little bit of black pepper, season that with it, and then squirt a little lemon juice on it when it comes off the grill. it's about as delicious a way to cook any organ meats, and they're eating that liver that has never seen a refrigerator, that is crisp like celery, and it's so firm. The sweetness of fresh kidneys, it's the best eating on the animal, and yet we're
throwing
it go by the wayside,
throwing it in the weeds. Yeah,
it's a shame.
I want to talk a little bit about the food crisis that you mentioned earlier.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on, because in our business we have trouble finding skilled tradesmen to do these jobs. So we grew up in the business. We were taught by the generation before us, but I feel like it's a huge problem in America where we don't have people that know how to do these jobs, in ours particular, to become butchers. What do we do when, they won't go out back and shoot a squirrel, but what happens when you go into the meat case and there's no butcher behind the counter to process the animal? Then what do we do?
Well, sadly, and I'm pro robotics, but anti-robot. Mm-hmm. Science is a wonderful thing. But I'm pro human being. And I believe in creating a culture in which human beings are allowed to flourish. And am I glad that we have computerized mail sorting? And I put a letter in the mail, and tomorrow it is sitting with my kid, 2,000 miles away, if I choose to write him a note. Yeah, I really like that. Sure. But we have mechanized so much of our world. We have lost the ability to actually remind ourselves that joy is a part of the equation, that interacting, connecting with another human being is part of the equation. And I think the biggest issue, and it's something that I fight a lot about on Capitol Hill and in state houses as I travel around the country, is immigration reform. You talked about, you used the word skilled worker, I think is the phrase that you used. There is not a farm, abattoir. I mean, I covered this in What's Eating America. I went into big and small meat cutting houses, big and small meat companies. I mean, Tyson Chicken, and they've got a lot of problems, but they're basically subsidizing the entire country of Samoa to migrate over and to live in Arkansas, and providing visas and government pressure on them because they can lobby, because they're $1 billion company, so they can lobby the company so that they have a resource of skilled people to work in their factory floors. Whether it's picking strawberries or cutting meat in a factory requires skilled labor. And over the last 15 years, we have seen the visa system get changed over and over and over again for the worse, less and less and less visas available. I was talking to a young woman who owns a 5th generation crab company on the Chesapeake Bay. And she said, I'm not sure year after year I can keep the business open. I said, why? She says, we don't have enough workers. We've cleaned up the waterways. We're seeing crab numbers rebound. We have figured out for ourselves a better way to take fewer females and more males, and just, all the stuff that the industry has done to protect itself. Right. And she said, but I used to get 52 visas a year, which was enough for our company and our 2 boats. And it was just, we did that for 80 years. And by the way, this is not red or blue or left or right. This is like 7 consecutive administrations from both parties that have not addressed immigration reform. So this is just about forward and about all of us. This is not political. This is civic. If we don't do something to fix the immigration problem in America and reevaluate the visa system that we have, we are in a real world of hurt, because the people that want to come to this country, who have skills and want to learn, are not living down the street from you. They come from other countries. So I said to this lady who owns this crab company, I said, how many applications do you get? She says, I have like 20 jobs. I need 20 more visas. And I said, why do you keep saying visas? Why don't you employ some local people? She goes, there's 170 people live within 20 minutes of where you are. This is small town America, way out at the end of the Chesapeake. I'm like, okay. She's like 60% of them are over 70, 30% of them are under the age of 12. I mean, she just went through the number. The others, there's the postman, the librarian, the garbage guys. I mean, it's small town America. She says, the other 5 work here. She's like, I need people from somewhere else, and we can't pay them enough to justify because of the price of gas and all. I mean, you do the math, right? She said, however, the women that have been coming here year after year are the most skilled pickers. They're able to send a ton of money home. They put their kids through school, and we went and interviewed them. And the people who came from Central America and Mexico every year to work for 6 months picking crab, it was like talking to the same people that were cutting meat in Tennessee, the same people that were picking strawberries in the Central California Valley. They want to be here. They pay taxes. Whether they're legal or illegal, they pay taxes because the taxes are taken out before they get their paycheck.
Sure.
And they have found it. They are an integral part of our food system. So until we have immigration reform, that's the single biggest impact. Then you have a group of people that want to learn. There was a moment in What's Eating America where the lady who manages the strawberry farm, I said, how long have you been managing strawberry farms? She says, 25 years. I said, 25 years. She says, yeah, I'm about as experienced, and I'm now the general manager for the largest land-holding strawberry company in North America. I'm like, okay. She says, I grew up in this business, 3rd generation. I said, that's great. How many people that look like me apply for a job every year? And she said, 0.
Sure.
She said, I can't tell you how many people, because we operate. One of the ways that they've improve their bottom line is to operate. Okay, if we can't get people from Central and South America, we'll buy farms down there and truck it across the borders ourselves. And so they're basically outsourcing jobs elsewhere. It's like the worst solution. There are people who would come up here and would love to learn everything there is to know about butchering animals. And by the way, I know I'm preaching to the converted, and a lot of your fans that are listening in are more learned on this subject. But the secret is decentralizing our food system, not centralizing it. I don't want 3 companies to supply 78% of the meat in this country. I would like to see, and by the way, artisanal butchery for a while was making a comeback, right? It's had some fits and starts. COVID didn't do a lot to help. I mean, it really kneecapped a whole bunch of industries. But it did help some, wise people who were able to get into the mail order thing quickly.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And, but in talking to people who own companies, small, big, and large, all across the country that are in the meat business, every single person, regardless of where they're from, what their politics are, all understand the same civic answer. We need immigration reform if we're going to continue this beautiful, beautiful world of ours. Our food system is damaged, and it's being held together with sealing wax and wire. And we have a major league problem in this country that is the crime of it all. It's solvable. We have the skill. We just don't have the will politically to make the changes, and that's really a shame.
Sure. Well, I'm glad to hear you voice your opinion. And part of what we're trying to do is on a very grassroots level, educate people on, what it might be like to butcher out your back door again. Because if you look at, let's even roll the clock back 100 years, it was becoming less popular, but let's say 150 years, everybody did it. And one of the things, and one of the things that we always say, and to your point about, needing somebody to do the job, it's a integral part of the process that is labor intensive. It's not necessarily for everyone, but if you want a piece of delicious meat in front of you, you're going to have to go through the slaughter step.
That's right.
So, we talk a lot about taking, livestock and converting it to something that, you can have on your plate in front of you. And we need people to do that. Or otherwise, as you mentioned, consolidation, That has many of its own issues because there's politics involved in that and the push-pull from billion-dollar companies, and as they begin to control how the supply chain works and who, because we'll ask the question too, does the chef need the butcher? Or does the butcher need the chef? Or in other words, the chef is
what
carrying.
Happens when you have a chef that is a butcher?
Well, there's that too. Or does the butcher need the farmer more than the farmer needs the chef? And the answer is it's a symphony. We need to work in concert. But that step, that slaughter step is such a integral, important part of it. That
it's why I support taking food from the wild and always
certainly
have as a young chef. I was in high school, so I wasn't even yet a chef, but I was cooking summers and knew I wanted to be in the food business from the time I was 4 years old. And I'm in New York City. I'm a Jewish kid from New York City. We don't hunt. What are you, crazy? And I got invited, and I was hooked immediately because whether it was breaking down 5 geese that we just popped, or a beautiful venison that was going to go into my freezer and feed me all year long. It was not only was it fantastic to spend days and days out in field and stream and forest, many times not even putting the gun to my shoulder.
Oh yeah.
But to be able to harvest food myself, then to learn to break it down myself was, a lifelong skill. And I still suck at it. And people look at me, cut things to go, wow, you're really good. And I'm like, oh, I'm not good. You should see people who are really good, and it is, to me, still a great thrill. I have a freezer in my garage, like most people who do this kind of thing, that has all the stuff that I've taken, right? Or that's been given to me from buddies I trade with. Yeah. And I'm most happy putting that food on my family's table. It's extraordinary. And
I agree.
There's you guys have both referenced it without naming it, but I want to put a name on it. We have lost an ability in America to, and I think people are going to be surprised to hear me say this. But especially since I'm, a left-wing, Lindsay liberal. I mean, politically, I'm basically a socialist utopian. But I believe that we have lost our ability to forget about mastering, to even understand the pioneering arts. People, not men, people, men and women, however you identify.
Sure.
Regardless of gender, regardless of identification, should know how to take a meal from the wild, cook it, win a fist fight if you need to, kiss somebody like you mean it. I mean, there's a whole list of skills. Light a fire, make one, survive for a night in the woods on your own. I mean, there is a whole world of this sort of, and I got turned on to it really during Bizarre Foods. I spent average of 10 days to 2 weeks with about 36 protected tribes around the world that live indistinguishably from the way their ancestors did. And every single one of them is a doctor, a veterinarian, an architect, a butcher, a chef, a hunter, a soldier. I mean, it's the skill set of these people that so many Westerners sort of make jokes about, it dwarfs ours. I mean, it dwarfs ours. And as we have this thing. I mean, and sure, can we put a man on the moon? Sure, but we can't solve a lot of the simpler problems, and we've screwed up the rest of our planet pretty darn well. And I think that understanding those pioneering arts and being able to master them is something that we all need to take a real strong, hard look at.
I couldn't agree more. And you mentioned your son, and just, I think too, Andrew, we have some primal instincts that if you look at some very young children, if you don't suppress those, they come out. And we found that some with our own children, or you perhaps you touched on it tribally, in other cultures, you see these youth that if you allow them to sort of play out some of their their instincts, they will gravitate towards, you know, these sort of activities, whether it's, you know, harvesting something, you know, like and
in a healthy, very healthy way.
So and we've always, sorry, I just finished my thought. We've always taught our children that if you kill something, you must eat it. Otherwise, we have, unless, you know, outside of, you know, maybe protecting your garden or something. I don't know.
There's a bat in the house.
Yes, exactly. Right. But, you know, and so, you know, at a young age, they're shooting doves, but it's always, I remember, you know, my 7-year-old is in the house cooking up the dove. They're eating the heart, the liver, the kidneys, and the breast from this dove, you know. So examples like that, I never deterred them, and they never knew anything different. So I think some of that is just making sure that we don't allow pulp culture to you know, get in between them and what could be, you know, a not that distant connection with the wild.
Well, I mentioned having 2 squirrels in my freezer. The first one, my 12-year-old popped, and I showed him how to skin it and gut it. The second one, I wasn't even home, and I came home, and it was in the freezer. So I feel like that's what we need to do right there. Pass it on to the next generation.
1,000%. We need to pass all that stuff on to the next generation.
And that's what Scott and I are doing in the butcher shop. So our father and grandfather started the business, and now he has 4 boys and 2 daughters, and I have 3 boys and a daughter. So between the 2 of us, there's 9 children, and we plan on bringing them into the business and teaching them the trade. And just one of like the other things, dad did with us.
Yeah, and one of the other things you touched on is just the joy that can be in the, you know, shoot a deer, for example. And you mentioned trading and things like that. There's a connection now. So you can then take the processed meats or the unprocessed meats or however, and you can eat with your family, you can give it to a friend, you can give it to a neighbor, and now you're like, this is something that I killed. I know where it came from. You know, I handled it this way, and that's there's a lot of joy in that, at least for me.
Tremendous joy.
Yeah,
and I'll extrapolate. I'll pull the thread 1 more inch.
Sure.
My son is, you know, he likes to go fishing with me. Not a big fan of hunting. Just could take it or leave it. However, that lifestyle and spending time with me outdoors has put him in a position to choose some other ways in which to spend his time that are really positive, that involve the outdoors, and got him into, you know, some stuff that was pretty darn healthy for him. And you know, he's now building stuff out in the mountains of Idaho, you know, and it makes him happy, and it's rewarding, and it's you know, as a dad, that's all we want.
Absolutely.
But the progression through that came from being exposed to a lot of different ideas. And I think one of the problems that we have in our country is we are narrowing the amount of ideas that we're exposing our kids to, you know. And if you lean into it and you let them experiment with anything, right, and you feed their interests, regardless of what they are, no pun intended, and that, you know, violin lessons are just as important as, you know, hunting and fishing, right, or whatever it is. It's all time well spent, you know, and it's fascinating to me. So many studies have been done. Feeding kids desires creates better human beings.
It doesn't mean
you're as a parent you're a doormat. I'm not talking about that. Obviously, they don't call the shots. It's a school night. You know, go the blank to bed.
Yeah, right.
But it's like, you know, you want to come out and do X or Y with me? You got it. Let's go try it. So
it is amazing to see how, you know, food in general, when you get youth around a process, it could even just be cooking in the kitchen, how much enjoyment that they can bring, that can bring to the entire process. You know, you've got the smells, you've got the sounds, you've got different, that environment being around food. I think that's one of the things that's really special for me, is to just know that, you know, all those moments, those family moments can really come together around food. You know, it's not only is it an essential part of our being, you know, you don't go along without it, but it can just be something that can be really just an enriching experience, and it sticks with you from a young age, and it will go with you your whole life. It can be just one smell that you know just takes you back to childhood or something like that. So that's one of the things that's really enjoyable for me, is just to have the family experience some of the different stuff, and you know, get outdoors and you know, fish, hunt, and that sort of thing. And as we wrap up our show, I'm curious, how can the audience right now follow or otherwise see what's going on with Andrew Zimmern, perhaps on a daily basis? But you've got the outdoor channel. You're doing some work there, if I'm not correct, or
Well, yeah, the easiest thing is to go to andrewzimmern.com. Everything is there. You can sign up for my Substack and get our newsletters and, you know, really see everything that we're doing. But we have a ton of stuff for our fans. Obviously, I have, you know, 4,000 episodes of 8 different shows, all available on Discovery Plus streaming, linear. You know, Magnolia doing Family Dinner, which is a great show. Outdoor Channel season 3 of Andrew Zimmern's Wild Game Kitchen drops real soon, like a month, something like that. But you know, the seasons 1 and 2 I think are available online at outdoorchannel.com. Let's see what else. I know there's more.
I'm certain there is social media. We follow you on Instagram.
If you go to my website, I mean, I'm Chef AZ on Instagram. I'm a pretty decent follow.
And hearing that, Andrew, is there a crown jewel to your collection of work that you really have? You know, or do you feel like you've got stuff going on now but in other words, like if you were to say, man, this really embodies some spirit of what I'm doing, is there anything that you would point anybody to specifically among that collection of work?
Yeah.
Is it the shaman beating your chest with a chicken?
Episode 3. I'm going back and watching it.
I'm trying to figure out the best way to express my thought here. I am extremely grateful and extremely blessed that I've had a very long and continuing to have a career, a public career, which is wonderful. It comes with the same, so you know, the grass is always greener, you know. But I'm extremely blessed and extremely lucky that I have a fantastic job and I've been able to enjoy it for a long, long time. You know, people say, you know, well, you've won 4 James Beard Awards and you've won, you know, governments have presented you, you know, awards. And, you know, a couple years ago, I won an Emmy that was, I mean, a pretty big deal. If you do TV, if you describe your job as a TV guy and you win an Emmy,
that's huge.
It's pretty good. Not a regional one, not knocking the regional ones, but I'm just like, you know, I mean, you know,
the real deal.
It's a good deal. You know, it's nice. You know, I'm not going to say I didn't celebrate that night.
Oh, I'll bet.
My lips to God's ears. Every single day I get a note or it just happened to me Sunday in the Cayman Islands. A young woman came up to me and handed me a letter from her mother. And the woman who gave it to me was in her 40s, mom in her 70s, dad had just died. And the mom knew that the daughter was going to this food festival that I was going to be out, and said, you hunt down Andrew Zimmern. You're going to be there. He's going to be there. And you give this to him. It was handwritten, 3 or 4 pages. And it just described the joy at the end of his life when he couldn't do anything but sit, that she and her husband took watching my show, and how he got to see all these places in the world, and they would cook foods from the different countries. I mean, they used the content that I was making as a springboard to enjoy their last years together. And I mean, I was bawling 3 sentences into this letter. And, you know, I hear that kind of stuff all the time. And sometimes it's at my local supermarket and someone taps me on the shoulder and says, my kid eats broccoli, because we told him if Andrew Zimmern can eat walrus anus, you can eat your broccoli. and you know, we always joke about these sort of cliches or these, you know, famous quotes. And it was Maya Angelou who said, nobody gives a hoot about how much money you make or what awards you win. What they care about when all is said and done is how you make them feel. So if you know, to be able to have impacted a human being, right? And to get feedback on that and know that, like, if I walk out the door and get hit by a bus, I will have made a positive change in at least one person's life. I mean, that's the greatest thing in the world. You know, I do all these shows where I'm in foreign countries with the world's first peoples, indigenous peoples. And I always ask their spiritual leader the same question, which is, why are we here on planet Earth? And it's not because I'm a Caddyshack Bill Murray guy, but you know, the joke in, you know, in that, you know, movie when he meets the Dalai Lama and asks him what's the meaning of life, is, I mean, I'm just dying to know. I mean, sometimes I meet people who have more on the ball in this arena than any of us ever will, and I believe have a more a direct pipeline to something that I don't know what it is, but they're living in a whole different zone.
Yep.
And every single one of them, some people speaking in clicks and whistles half the world away from where the other one is, say the same thing. We're on this planet to make the world a better place and love each other. And I'm like, that is the stuff that I'm really proud to say I can check that box to my satisfaction today. And I'm trying to hold on to that and not muck it up over the next 30 years. That's the best. That is absolutely not even close. Just talking about it and knowing that is something that keeps me going. It's why I'm going to die in the saddle.
There you go. Yep.
Fantastic answer.
It's your art, and you do it well, and it's impactful, and when it comes back that way, it's paramount. Nothing else meets that. Andrew, we want to thank you for joining us today on the show. Remind everybody they go to Andrew Zimmern. It's Zimmern, correct? 1 M or 2 M's? Two M's. Okay, 2 M's. AndrewZimmern.com. Land
all
there.
The info's there.
Get that info.
I would like to personally invite you, if you're ever in Creston, Ohio, just south, about 45 minutes south of Cleveland, we'd love to have you to our shop sometime. So,
oh my gosh, I would love that.
Open invitation.
I would love that.
We do not have walrus anus. No. We do not have shaman, but we can come up with something.
We can give you we raise bisons. We can give you a bison anus.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. I love that. Well, I'm always traveling around, and you guys actually know how to get a hold of me. So please send my team the address and everything, so I can stick it down, because I actually, someone in my office keeps a list of that kind of stuff, sort of places I need to stop, because when I'm going to a certain part of the world, it's an easy thing to grab. And I'm in that area twice a year at least.
Wonderful.
Open invite. To it. We'd love to see you.
Love it. I would too.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you.